For nearly 2,000 years, one biblical ritual has remained frozen in time. The ashes ran out. The temple fell. The priests scattered into exile across the nations. 20 centuries of silence. 20 centuries of waiting. Then came July 1st, 2025. A remote hilltop in Israel. Flames rising into the morning sky. A red heifer burning on a pyre of ancient wood. Priests dressed in white linen, chanting prayers that hadn't been spoken in 2 millennia. The internet exploded. "It just happened!" the headlines screamed across every platform. The third temple is imminent. The prophetic clock has started. The end times are here. But what actually happened that day in the Sumerian hills? Was this the real thing, the fulfillment we've been waiting for? Or was it something else entirely? And here's a question most videos won't touch. Why did Hamas, a terrorist organization, cite these very animals as one of their justifications for the October 7th massacre? The answer is more complex, more nuanced, and ultimately more significant than the viral videos suggest. Let's separate fact from hype and understand what's truly at stake. To understand why July 2025 matters, we need to go back, way back, to a single chapter in the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 19 contains one of the strangest commands in all of Scripture. God instructs Moses to take a parah aduma, a red heifer, and sacrifice it in a very specific way. The animal must be completely red, not a single hair of any other color. It must never have worn a yoke or done any work, and it must be burned entirely, hide, flesh, blood, and all, along with cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet thread. The resulting ashes? They're mixed with spring water to create a purification solution. In Jewish tradition, this is called a chok, a divine decree that transcends human understanding. Even King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, said he labored to understand this law, but it eluded him. You don't need to understand it. You obey it. But here's why it matters. This ritual solves a very specific problem called tumat met, ritual impurity from contact with death. In Jewish law, this is the highest level of contamination. If you've touched a dead body, been in the same room as a corpse, or even walked over an unmarked grave, you're ritually impure. And that impurity bars you completely from entering the temple. No purification means no priests can serve. No serving priests means no sacrifices. No sacrifices means no functioning temple. The red heifer isn't just an ancient curiosity. It's the key that unlocks everything. And here's what makes this even more remarkable. According to the Mishnah, only 9 red heifers have ever been prepared in all of Jewish history. 9. In over 1,000 years of temple worship. The first was prepared by Moses himself, the second by Ezra, and 7 more throughout the Second Temple period. The great medieval scholar Maimonides wrote something haunting about this. He said the 10th red heifer would be prepared by the Messiah himself. The 10th heifer marks the Messianic age. When Rome destroyed the Second Temple in 70 AD, the remaining ashes eventually ran out, and after that, no more purification was possible. Every Jew alive today carries this ritual impurity. Every single one. There are no exceptions. For 2,000 years, this seemed like an insurmountable barrier. Then something changed. In 1987, a group in Jerusalem founded the Temple Institute. Their mission? Prepare everything needed for the Third Temple. Over the next 4 decades, they would recreate sacred vessels, train priests, and conduct research that would have seemed like fantasy to previous generations. And in September 2022, a Texas rancher named Byron Stinson, working with an organization called Bonnet Israel, did something unprecedented. He flew 5 red Angus heifers from Texas to Israel. 5 potential candidates, $500,000 invested, years of genetic screening and careful breeding. The question was no longer, is it possible? The question became, when? So when flames rose over Shiloh on July 1, 2025, the world wanted to know, had the 2,000-year wait finally ended? Or was this something the viral headlines completely missed? Let's examine exactly what happened, forensically, factually, because the truth is both less and more significant than the clickbait suggests. Let's start with the facts that most viral videos conveniently ignore. First, the location. The ceremony on July 1st took place in Shiloh, in the Sumerian hills north of Jerusalem. It did not happen in Jerusalem. It did not happen on the Mount of Olives. It was nowhere near the Temple Mount. Why does this matter? Because Jewish law is extremely specific about where the red heifer ritual must occur. The sacrifice must take place on the Mount of Olives, at a location with a direct line of sight to where the temple stood, which today is the location of the Dome of the Rock. Shiloh is about 40 kilometers north. There's no line of sight. It's the wrong location entirely. This wasn't an accident. Shiloh was chosen strategically. It's in controlled territory, away from the explosive flashpoint of Jerusalem. A safe place to practice without triggering immediate violence. Smart logistics, but not halachically valid for the actual ritual. Second, and this is crucial, the heifer used in the ceremony was disqualified. Let me say that again. The cow they burned was not kosher for the ritual. At some point in its life, the animal had developed imperfections. White or black hairs appeared on its coat. The Temple Institute confirmed this openly. This particular heifer could never have been used for the real thing. So why use a disqualified animal? Precisely because it was disqualified. There was no waste of a potentially valid candidate. It was perfect for practice and useless for prophecy. Third, the purpose. This was a dress rehearsal. Nothing more, nothing less. Think about it. No priest alive today has ever performed this ritual. The last time it happened was nearly 2,000 years ago. The knowledge exists in ancient texts, but the actual execution, that skill has been lost to history. The July ceremony was hands-on training. Priests needed to learn not from books, but from doing. They tested the pyre construction, how to stack cedar, pine, cypress, and fig wood in a pyramid formation for optimal airflow. They measured burn rates. They calculated ash yields. They practiced integrating the scarlet wool, hyssop, and cedar wood that must be thrown into the flames. Byron Stinson himself released a statement afterward. His exact words, "This experience better prepares us for the final ritual with a kosher heifer." Translation, this was practice, not the real thing. Put yourself in that scene for a moment. A hilltop in Samaria, dawn light breaking over ancient land, a pyramid of cedar and cypress carefully stacked, a priest in white linen, the first to wear these garments for this specific purpose in 20 centuries. The heifer led forward, red coat gleaming in the early sun, calm, unaware. Then, the blade, the blood, the flames climbing skyward, smoke rising for the first time in 2,000 years. For the men standing there, this wasn't theater. This was rehearsal for prophecy. They were practicing for the day when a perfect heifer would burn on the Mount of Olives, and the path to the third temple would finally open. So, if this was just a rehearsal with a disqualified cow in the wrong location, why did the internet explode? Why do millions believe the prophetic clock just started? Because the red heifer isn't just about a cow. It's about what that cow unlocks. Here's the problem that most people don't fully grasp. Every Jew alive today carries what's called tumat met, ritual impurity from contact with death. Have you ever been in a hospital? You're contaminated. Attended a funeral? Contaminated. Walked through a cemetery? Contaminated. After 2,000 years without the purification ritual, this contamination is absolutely universal. There are no exceptions. Not the most pious rabbi, not the most dedicated priest. Everyone. And here's the consequence. No purified Jew can enter the temple's inner courts. No priest can perform the sacrifices. The third temple could be built tomorrow. Architects have the plans, craftsmen have the skills, but no one could serve in it. You could have a perfect building standing on the Temple Mount, and it would be useless. An empty shell, a monument to impossibility. The red heifer is the only solution. 19, verses 17 through 19, prescribes the formula. Ash of a perfect red heifer, not a single non-red hair on its entire body, mixed with mayim chayim, living water from a natural spring. This mixture is sprinkled on the impure person on the third day and again on the seventh day. Then, and only then, purification is complete. Temple access is restored. This isn't one option among many. According to Torah, it's the only remedy for corpse impurity. No heifer equals no purification equals no temple worship. Period. There's also a profound mystery embedded in this ritual, something that puzzled even the ancient sages. The heifer purifies the impure, but it contaminates those who prepare it. The priest who burns the animal becomes ritually impure until evening. The one who gathers the ashes, impure until evening. Purity and impurity intertwined in a single sacred act. Solomon himself couldn't fully explain it. In Ecclesiastes, he wrote, "All this I tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me." Some truths are meant to be obeyed, not understood. Now here's where it gets urgent for millions of Christians watching videos like this one. If the red heifer ashes become available, priests can be purified. If priests are purified, the third temple can actually function, not just exist as a building, but operate as a living center of worship. If the temple functions, the sacrificial system resumes for the first time in 2 millennia. For dispensationalist Christians, and this is a massive demographic, the third temple isn't optional. It's required for end times prophecy to unfold. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 speaks of a coming ruler who will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Matthew 24:15 quotes Jesus warning about the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 describes the man of sin exalting himself in God's temple. No temple means no stage for these prophecies. This is why a Texas rancher spent years breeding red cattle for Israel. This is why evangelical Christians have donated millions to temple preparation projects. They're not trying to convert to Judaism. They're trying to set the stage for what they believe will be the final act of human history. But there's another Christian perspective worth mentioning. The book of Hebrews, chapter 9, verses 13 and 14, directly references the red heifer. The author writes that the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on the unclean sanctifies them for the purifying of the flesh. But then comes the contrast. How much more shall the blood of Christ purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? For covenant theology Christians, Christ himself is the ultimate red heifer. He was sacrificed outside the camp, just as the heifer was burned outside the camp. His blood doesn't just purify the flesh, it purifies the soul. From this perspective, rebuilding the physical temple and resuming animal sacrifices isn't preparation for prophecy. It's regression, a return to shadows when the reality has already come. Two Christian views, both sincere, both finding significance in the same ancient ritual. But here's where our story takes a darker turn. Because this isn't just about theology. In October 2023, a terrorist organization explicitly cited these heifers, these specific animals from Texas, as justification for mass murder. In January 2024, 100 days into the Gaza war that followed the October 7th massacre, Hamas military spokesman Abu Ubaidah delivered a major address. He listed the justifications for the attack, the grievances, the reasons Hamas believed the slaughter of over 1,000 civilians was legitimate. Among those reasons, explicitly stated, "The Jews are bringing red heifers." Let that sink in. A terrorist organization explaining why they murdered families at a music festival and in their homes pointed to cattle imported from Texas. The operation itself was named Al-Aqsa Flood, not named after political grievances or territorial disputes, named after the mosque they claimed to be defending. From the Muslim perspective, particularly the extremist Muslim perspective, here's how this looks. The Third Temple cannot coexist with the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. They occupy the same sacred ground, the same hilltop. For Muslims, the red heifer represents the first step in a Zionist plan to destroy Islam's third holiest site. These aren't seen as farm animals. In extremist media across the Muslim world, these heifers are portrayed as weapons of religious war, tools of aggression against Islamic holy places. And this isn't just a Palestinian concern. Al-Aqsa is sacred to 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Any perceived threat to that site has the potential to mobilize Islamic anger on a global scale. Consider the timeline. September 2022. 5 Texas heifers land at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. Throughout 2022 and 2023, news of the heifers spreads through Muslim media channels. Sermons are preached, articles are written. Anger builds. October 7th, 2023. Hamas launches Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. January 2024. Abu Ubaidah explicitly cites the red heifers as justification. Did the heifers cause October 7th? That's too simplistic. Decades of conflict, failed peace processes, and regional tensions all played their part. But were the heifers part of the inflammatory narrative that Hamas used to justify their attack? That's documented. That's on the record. That's undeniable. And here's where the geography becomes terrifying. Remember, the real sacrifice can't happen in Shiloh. Jewish law requires it to take place on the Mount of Olives with a direct line of sight to the Temple Mount. Rabbi Yitzchak Mamo, working with an organization called Uvnei Jerusalem, has reportedly acquired land on the Mount of Olives specifically for this purpose. A strategic position with an unobstructed view of where the Dome of the Rock now stands. Reports suggest a massive white altar has been prepared, either constructed on site or ready for rapid deployment. Imagine that scenario. A burning heifer on the Mount of Olives, smoke rising directly in view of Islam's third holiest site, cameras broadcasting worldwide, 1.8 billion Muslims watching in real time. The reaction wouldn't be protests. The reaction wouldn't be diplomatic complaints. The reaction could very well be war. So we have the theology, we have the geopolitics, the spiritual significance, and the explosive danger. But here's what might surprise you. The infrastructure for all of this is already built. The Temple Institute has spent 40 years preparing. 40 years of painstaking work recreating everything needed for temple service. They've crafted over 60 sacred vessels to exact biblical specifications. The golden menorah, the 7-branched lampstand, the table of showbread, the golden incense altar, the copper laver where priests would wash, silver trumpets for priestly announcements. They've woven complete sets of priestly garments, including the high priest's breastplate with 12 stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel. They've even rediscovered the process for creating techelet, the special blue dye extracted from murex snails that was lost for centuries. These aren't museum displays. These are functional items, stored and waiting for the day they'll be used. And it's not just objects. It's people. The Temple Institute has established a school of Kohanim, a training program for priestly descendants. For the first time in 2,000 years, men of Aaronic lineage are learning the actual procedures of temple service. They've used DNA testing to verify priestly lineage. This isn't just taking family traditions at face value, it's genetic verification. These trainees are learning slaughter techniques for temple sacrifices, incense preparation protocols, service rotation procedures, even the musical accompaniments that Levites would perform. We now have the first generation of trained, verified priests since Roman soldiers burned the temple to the ground. As for the heifers themselves, yes, the original Texas 5 have largely been disqualified. That was always expected. Animals age, hair colors change, minor blemishes appear. This is biology. But the project didn't end with those 5 animals. Breeding programs have been established at Shiloh and in the Golan Heights. New calves are being born under rabbinical supervision. Every red calf is examined from birth, watched constantly for any sign of disqualification. The search continues daily. Not a question of if a perfect heifer will appear, a question of when. And the real estate is secured. Land on the Mount of Olives purchased specifically for the sacrifice ceremony. Strategic position with Temple Mount line of sight. Legal ownership established. Reports indicate a massive white altar has been prepared, either already constructed or ready for rapid deployment to the site. Let me be absolutely clear about what this means. The priests are trained. The vessels are crafted. The garments are woven. The land is purchased. The altar is prepared. Only one variable remains. A perfect, unblemished, completely red heifer that passes every rabbinical inspection. That's it. That's the only missing piece. So how close are we? What barriers actually remain before the real ceremony could take place? First and most obvious, the perfect heifer. The standard is almost impossibly strict. The animal must be completely red. Not mostly red, not red enough, completely, totally, entirely red. 2 non-red hairs growing next to each other anywhere on the body means automatic disqualification. The heifer must never have worn a yoke or performed any work. Even leaning against something for support could potentially disqualify it. And it must be in its 3rd year of life, old enough to be mature, young enough to be unblemished by age. Candidates exist in the breeding programs. They're under constant rabbinical observation. Any day, one of them could be certified as kosher, or any day, a single white hair could end a candidate's eligibility. Second, the halachic debates. 2,000 years without performing this ritual means some details have been lost. Scholars are still debating questions that seem minor but matter enormously. Does 3rd year mean entering the 3rd year or completing it? What exactly constitutes a yoke in modern context? What's the precise procedure for components that are described in general terms in the ancient texts? The July 2025 rehearsal was partly designed to resolve these questions through practice, learning by doing what written texts alone can't teach. Third, and this may be the highest barrier, political permission. Any sacrifice on the Mount of Olives would require Israeli government approval, police permits, massive security coordination. And consider the current reality. Israel is at war. Regional tensions are at their maximum. No responsible government would authorize a ceremony that could ignite a broader conflict. The political window is closed right now. But political situations change. Governments change. Regional dynamics shift. A different administration, a different moment, a different calculation of risk versus religious imperative. The infrastructure will be ready whenever that window opens. So, where does this leave us? The machinery is assembled. The operators are trained. The fuel is being refined. All that remains is a perfect heifer passing inspection and a political window opening for the ceremony. When both align, and those who've dedicated their lives to this believe they eventually will, they won't hesitate. Let's step back now. See the full picture of what we're actually witnessing. For 2,000 years, the red heifer ritual was impossible. The ashes depleted, the temple destroyed, the priests scattered to the 4 winds, dispersed across nations, absorbed into cultures that forgot their ancient calling. Slowly, century by century, the world forgot. The red heifer became a curiosity, an ancient footnote, a strange law in an old book that scholars debated and ordinary people ignored. Impossible, irrelevant, history. But in our lifetime, in our generation, something shifted. The pieces began reassembling. A Texas rancher devotes years of his life to breeding red cattle, not for beef, not for dairy, for prophecy. A cargo plane crosses the Atlantic with 5 heifers in its hold. Destination, the land promised to Abraham. An ancient training program resurrects in Jerusalem. Men who can trace their lineage to Aaron learn to serve as their ancestors served. Sacred vessels emerge from workshops, gold, silver, copper, crafted exactly as Moses prescribed. Land is purchased on the Mount of Olives, specific coordinates, direct line of sight to where Solomon's temple once stood. Priests learn to slaughter, to burn incense, to serve, for the first time in 20 centuries. And then, on a July morning in 2025, fire consumes a heifer on a Sumerian hilltop. The smoke rises, the prayers echo, the ancient rhythm stirs. It's a rehearsal, a practice run, a dress rehearsal with a disqualified animal at the wrong location. The viral headlines got it wrong. Prophecy wasn't fulfilled that day. But here's what those headlines missed. The rehearsal matters because the real performance is coming. You don't rehearse for something you never planned to do. You don't spend 40 years building vessels, training priests, acquiring land, and breeding cattle for a museum exhibit. July 1st, 2025 was a statement, a declaration, a signal to everyone watching. We are ready. We are waiting. And when the moment comes, we will act. Whether you see this through Jewish eyes, the 10th heifer preparing the way for Messiah, the one Maimonides said would come, or through dispensationalist Christian eyes, the third temple being staged for the tribulation, the Antichrist, and Christ's glorious return, or through covenant Christian eyes, a troubling return to shadows and types when the reality, Jesus Christ himself, has already come, or through purely geopolitical eyes, a potential trigger for regional catastrophe, the match that could ignite a powder keg. One thing is undeniable. Something is stirring in Jerusalem. The infrastructure of an ancient prophecy is being assembled in real time. The players are positioning. The pieces are moving into place. The countdown may have begun. Was July 1st, 2025 the fulfillment? No. The viral headlines overstated it. Be skeptical of anyone who tells you otherwise. But was it significant? Absolutely. It was proof of concept, proof of readiness, proof of intent. Proof that when the perfect heifer appears and the political window opens, they won't hesitate. The 2,000-year pause may be ending, and we may be the generation that sees what comes next. So what does this mean for us? For you watching this right now? Whether the third temple rises in our lifetime or not, the red heifer reminds us of something profound. God's plans unfold on His timeline, not ours. For 2,000 years, this seemed impossible. Ridiculous even. A ritual that could never be restored. A temple that could never rise. Now, it seems increasingly inevitable. That should give us pause and perspective, and perhaps urgency about what we believe and how we live. We may be the generation that witnesses what our ancestors only dreamed of or feared. This is not the end of the story. It's barely the beginning. We'll be watching for the next heifer candidate, the next political development, the next step toward, or away from, the third temple. If you want to stay informed, subscribe and hit that notification bell. When something happens, you'll know. But I want to hear from you. What do you believe? Is the prophetic clock ticking? Is this genuine preparation for the end times, or a distraction from what truly matters? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to know where you stand.